Welcome. This virtual meeting remains in compliance with the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. As such, there will be the ability for public comment on all agenda items at the end of the meeting. If you wish to provide a comment, please indicate so by submitting your request in the Q&A field, and we will unmute you to comment publicly in the order comments are received. Comments will be held to a strict 3 minutes per person. Thank you. Lieutenant Governor, Madam Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary, and good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this meeting of the International Affairs and Trade Development Interagency Committee to order. This committee has been established by Governor Newsom pursuant to Executive Order N-08-19. The purpose of today's meeting is to review and to inform the public about recent activities undertaken by our state agencies and departments with international partners, and to hear public comments that can help guide us and prioritize our future international engagements. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
GO-Biz Director Dee Dee Myers.
Here.
Secretary Tokes Omashakin.
You have Darwin Musavi here on behalf of the Secretary, as well as Giles Giovinazzi.
Thank you.
Giles Giovinazzi, Senior Advisor, CalSTA.
Thank you, Giles. Secretary Wade Crowfoot.
Hi, you have Amanda Hansen here, Deputy Secretary for Climate Change, sitting in for Secretary Crowfoot, who's out.
Thank you, Amanda. Secretary Karen Ross.
Good afternoon. You have Virginia Jameson here, sitting in for Secretary Ross.
Thank you. Secretary Yana Garcia.
Hi, everyone. Shireen D'Souza here, sitting in for Yana for a few minutes. She'll be joining soon.
Thank you, Shireen. Chair Leanne Randolph.
I'm here.
CEO Carolyn Bettetta.
I'm here.
Chair David Hochschild. Director Mark Ghilarducci.
I am here.
Lieutenant Governor, a quorum is established.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Our first order of business will be to approve the minutes of our last meeting. May I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 The minutes are approved. So again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the International Affairs and Trade Development Interagency Committee meeting. The purpose of today's meeting, as always, is to exchange information on our various engagements with international partners of the state of California. The goal of this committee is to bring together all the state's agencies, departments, and programs that are engaged in international activity in order to assure cohesiveness to our international strategy and to give the public an opportunity to learn what we are doing and to provide feedback and input. In that vein, we'll use this meeting to give an update to the public on our activities since last July and provide a snapshot of what our international affairs and trade priorities will be in the months ahead. Of particular note, I'm very interested in hearing from colleagues who participated in this year's Climate Week proceedings in October and from those who participated in the COP27 meetings in Egypt last month. But let me start by noting some significant international engagements that have occurred over the past 6 months since we last met. I will leave it to my colleagues on the committee to go into greater detail, but I would like to mention that in September, I welcomed Queen Maxima of the Netherlands to California, along with first partner Jennifer Newsom and a substantial business delegation. Together, we witnessed the signing of a memorandum of cooperation focusing heavily on our joint cooperation in the field of environmental and climate change matters. Last month, I met with the president of the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy, who was visiting California to explore the possibility of entering into a memorandum of understanding focused heavily on climate change issues. I was delighted to be accompanied to that meeting by senior representatives of CDFA, Cal EPA, and CARB. With regard to Mexico, At our last meeting, I highlighted the progress being made on the Otay Mesa East border crossing project. And today I'm pleased to report that we've continued to hit major milestones on the road to the completion of this critically important project. First, in August, I traveled to the border along with CalSTA Secretary Omashakin to break ground on the border crossing facility. While there, we were joined once again by a number of our Mexican counterparts, including Governor Avila of Baja California. In September, I traveled to Mexico City with a delegation sponsored by the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce. While there, I participated in a signing ceremony between SANDAG and the Mexican government of the revenue sharing agreement that will govern the collection and sharing of toll revenues that will be generated by the new port of entry. In addition, I convened a meeting between a number of our state and local government officials directly involved in the project and their Mexican counterparts, the result of which will be improved cross-border communications as we move forward together to complete this critically important binational piece of infrastructure. I also had the opportunity to meet with Mexican Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Marcelo Ebrard, and Chief Officer for North America, Roberto Velasco, to discuss ways we can strengthen the already strong relations between California and Mexico. Finally, I met again with U.S. Ambassador to Mexico, Ken Salazar, who continues to be a very important supporter and champion of completion of this project. And just last month, I returned to the site of the new border crossing facility with U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, to show him the progress being made and to underscore the need for continued federal support and funding for this project. Also pertaining to Mexico, we continue to make progress on leveraging our Commission of the Californias platform with a convening in September that included over 150 senior staff level participants, over 100 of whom participated in person. We hope to be able to schedule a governor level meeting in the not too distant future. And finally, allow me to congratulate Mexico and the United States as we mark the bicentennial of our diplomatic relations. California is exceedingly proud of the role we play in solidifying and advancing a close and friendly relationship shared by the United States and Mexico. Shifting for a moment back to Europe, last week I was honored to be among the guests invited to the State Department by Vice President Harris and Secretary Blinken to a luncheon in honor of visiting French President Emmanuel Macron. It was a pleasure to greet President Macron on behalf of the people of the state of California. Looking ahead, our teams continue to make very good progress on preparing for what promises to be a well-subscribed and successful visit to Japan in March. We have been working on this trip for over a year, and there are at least 5 members of this committee who will participate in this trip, which Secretary Myers and I will lead together. It is extremely exciting. We do not do many major international trade missions, and this one will take us to both Tokyo and to our sister province of Osaka. The focus will be on attracting investment and fostering cooperation in the fields of climate change, smart energy, and agriculture. As we have noted many times, Japan is California's #1 source of foreign direct investment, and California is the country's largest destination for foreign direct investment. So all of this work is continuing to go forward. I want to recognize Emily, you and your team at GO-Biz and all of the hard work that you are doing along with the California Chamber of Commerce to make sure that this trip is a great success. And I'm sure that Secretary Myers will have something to say about this as well. Finally, at the last meeting in July, I was able to report to you on the proceedings of the 9th Summit of the Americas, which was hosted by the United States in Los Angeles. Today, I am very pleased to report to you that the Biden-Harris administration has once again selected California to host a major international summit meeting. San Francisco has been named as the host city for the 2023 APEC Leaders Meeting, which will take place here next November. The competition to host this meeting was national and it was tough. But once again, the administration has recognized that California, with our world-leading diversity, prosperity, and spirit of innovation, is the natural place to host an international summit focusing on the Asia-Pacific region. If this year's summit is in Thailand is an indication, we will host most of the 21 prime ministers, presidents, or other heads of state who will be visiting for that summit. And we have 11 and a half months to continue to prepare. Now, with that, I would like to turn it over to Secretary Myers for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor. It's always exciting to hear how much is happening on the international scene here in California. We are, as we like to say, a nation state. And so I'd like to bring everyone up to speed on what's happening here at GO-Biz as part of our international engagement and our upcoming priorities. First, hydrogen, which is a substantial topic for our international partners and presents great opportunities for foreign investment, as you all know. The U.S. Department of Energy will award $8 billion to up to 10 regional H2 hubs. And our ZEV team at GO-Biz has been working diligently and has developed a proposal for a green hydrogen hub, and more broadly to advance and accelerate the hydrogen market all across California in alignment with Governor Newsom's priorities. So to that end, we've launched ARCHES, California's Public-Private Hydrogen Hub Consortium. We're working in partnership. Our GO-Biz ZEV team and ARCHES brings together key public and private stakeholders to build the framework for a California renewable clean hydrogen hub. So that's very exciting. ARCHES includes stakeholders from the University of California, labor, and industry, all with the goal of building a system that can leverage federal dollars to drive private investment and really move the needle in this critical area of clean energy. ARCHES formally launched with an event at the Port of Long Beach in October, and we now have more than 130 members. So really coming together, very exciting. As a first step, we submitted a formal concept paper to the U.S. Department of Energy on November 7th, and we're now working on the full proposal, which we'll submit in April. And then we'll wait, of course, to hear Department of Energy's outcomes. But we're very excited and very hopeful. Now let's talk a little bit about the highlights of our recent international engagement. We continue to work actively with our Mexican partners. So let me touch on a couple of the key recent examples. In September, executive branch participants across California, Baja California, and Baja California Sur met in San Diego, which the Lieutenant Governor mentioned. The intention there was to re-energize the Commission of the Californians, ComCal, by bringing together the new governors and the new administrations. In addition to that basic relationship building, the main focus was on California's planned transition towards zero-emission vehicles and the wide-ranging regional impacts that will have on our neighbors to the south, and importantly, how we can collaborate to address those impacts. Again, as the Lieutenant Governor noted, there were more than 100 state officials on all sides in person at the UC San Diego Institute of the Americas, and there were 50 or more additional participants who joined virtually. So it was a terrific turnout. And while the theme for this first convening was the zero emission vehicle transition, the broader focus for the ongoing dialogue continues to be on climate change mitigation and adaptation more broadly. So a lot of good work being done there. As a result of the meetings, GO-Biz has been invited by the U.S. Department of Transportation to present on ComCal at their next U.S.-Mexico Joint Working Committee meeting. U.S. DOT wants to evaluate the work we're doing and elevate that work. They pointed out that no other border states have MOUs, nor have they been as proactive as California on this range of topics. So they believe our efforts can help further conversations about alternative fuel corridors and encourage similar work in other border states. Looking ahead, GO-Biz International is working with our Mexican counterparts to organize a series of trade and best practice missions over the course of the next 8 months, covering aerospace, defense, zero-emission vehicle deployment, the blue economy, water reuse and drought mitigation, among many other topics. These trade missions will be executed using funds that are dedicated to expanding cross-border trade with Mexico, which is a key priority. With regard to foreign direct investment, we've been really busy showcasing California as a top-tier business destination and connecting directly with hundreds of companies around the world and consulting with them on their next steps in considering expansion into our state. For example, in November, our GO-Biz International team traveled to Portugal to attend the Web Summit and to Toronto to attend the Select USA Canada conference. Both events provided an excellent opportunity to position GO-Biz as a leader in welcoming innovative foreign companies to California. My staff met with dozens of companies from strategic industries, including life sciences, ag tech, battery production, entertainment, and others that are key to the economy here in California and provide excellent market opportunities. After our success in leading a delegation of more than 20 California economic development organizations to the 2022 Select USA Investment Summit in Washington, D.C., we're shifting our focus to the 2023 event, which will happen in May. Economic development organizations from across the state will have the opportunity to apply to become a member of next year's delegation. So excited to repeat the success of last year. These events have already borne fruit. This year, we landed companies from around the world, including a zero-emission vehicle battery company from Israel, an energy storage company from Australia, and a robotics company from Italy. Furthermore, we've engaged with innovative partners statewide that are focused on attracting foreign founders and have supported multiple incubators in bringing in these international startups. With regard to export, the California State Trade Expansion Program, STEP, is now fully overseen and administered exclusively by the GO-Biz International team. With additional grant funding from SBA, GO-Biz International is able to work alongside key partners to provide export promotion support to California small businesses. We were awarded a total of $600,000 in federal grants, and we're on track to support more than 100 California small businesses with their global expansion this fiscal year through a series of trade missions, trade show participation, and export vouchers. I'd also like to highlight that we have already supported more than 130 companies this calendar year with federal STEP dollars and more than 70 more with funds from the GO-Biz International team. Demand from California small businesses exceeded the funds received from SBA, so we were able to provide program continuity with state funds while awaiting a new reward. So again, another really successful program. The California STEP program has been instrumental in the success of various small businesses, such as Aero Turbine, with the outcome of a sales agreement valued at $12 million, 11 new employees, and an export achievement certificate awarded by the U.S. International Trade Administration. So one good example. Looking ahead, we're supporting several California companies to exhibit at the Japan Smart Energy Week trade show in Tokyo as part of our trade mission, which Lieutenant Governor mentioned. It's a fantastic example of the way the state is advancing the clean tech sector as part of our major trade mission, which is taking place in March. So we're very excited about that. Again, as the Lieutenant Governor highlighted. So these are just a few of the things that we've been working on this year. GO-Biz International will continue to focus on programs and services that align with the future competitiveness of California and California businesses within the global economy. So excited about the work we've done. Lots more to do, and we look forward to reporting back on that at our next meeting. So with that, thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor.
Well, thank you, Madam Secretary. And it is just incredible to see the way that you have expanded your international team and the incredible reach that you have and how productive this has been for the state of California. So thank you so much for that great report and for everything you all are doing over there. And of course, for sharing it in this public forum. Now we go around the table to all of our committee members, one at a time, to hear your reports. This meeting, what we would like to do is start with the 4 members of the committee who either themselves or their offices or departments have had a presence at the COP27 or at Climate Week in Washington, or both, and to hear from them. And then once we hear from the 4 of them, we will continue around the table to hear the general reports from all of the other committee members. So with that, I would like to start with Virginia Jameson, who is here representing the California Department of Food and Agriculture. Welcome, Virginia.
Thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor. I'm Virginia Jameson. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Climate and Working Lands at CDFA. And I had the honor and pleasure of attending the COP with Secretary Ross. And I would say this year, the role of agriculture in climate change received unprecedented attention at the COP. November 12th was Agriculture Day, and that day Secretary Ross was the moderator of an opening day side event panel at the UN Food and Agriculture Pavilion. And that panel was entitled Farmers at the Center, and consisted of farmers and representatives of farm support organizations from all over the world, many countries represented, spotlighting climate smart agricultural practices and how they are using those practices not only to address climate, but to improve food security, nutrition security, while simultaneously delivering upon multiple benefits like health and biodiversity enhancement. The Secretary also participated in a panel put on by the COP26 presidency focused on multi-level action and the ambition loop, which was a panel intended to showcase the ways that regulation can stimulate business or civil society and shape climate action. And the example that she was able to contribute was California's methane reduction goals and participation in the global methane pledge. You may know that California has the most ambitious methane reduction goal in the world, 40% reduction over 2013 levels by 2030. And to meet this goal in the livestock and dairy sector in particular, the state's done quite a bit of investment into anaerobic digesters. And CDFA has been able to distribute about $200 million in funds for digester projects, which has brought in matching funds of over $400 million from grant awardees. And so we've seen the dairy and livestock industry stimulated both by the regulation and by the state's contribution. So finally, the last panel she was participating in was a sustainable governance and management of water panel, talking about how we can ensure food and nutrition security in the face of climate change. That was hosted by the Environmental Defense Fund. And on that panel, she described California's Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and how we're implementing that act. So yeah, one of the biggest takeaways and highlights was just, again, the elevation of the conversation about agriculture and food systems, both as important for providing food to our now 8 billion person population, as well as an opportunity to ameliorate climate impacts by sequestering carbon in soil and biomass and creating opportunities for repurposing things like methane and manure into useful products and energy. So coming out of the COP, of course, California has always been a real leader in the climate smart agriculture space and has paved the way for programs focused on healthy soils and climate smart ag practices and methane reduction, as I mentioned. And that's been included in our strategic plan and ag vision for a long time. But it was really inspiring to see the way the topic has gained traction. And we've been doing, many international webinars sharing information that we have on healthy soils and climate smart ag practices, and we'll continue to do that. And just, looking forward to an expansion of all of those things. So I'll stop there, but thank you for the opportunity to contribute.
Thank you very much, Deputy Secretary Jameson, for that report. Also at COP27 was the chair of the, representing the California Air Resources Board, Leanne Randolph. Madam Secretary, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me grab my notes. Okay. I had the opportunity to continue CARB's energetic international engagement this year, and it was really wonderful to have so many events that were in person and getting to interact with folks. And so I'll just share a few highlights. First, I'll highlight Climate Week in New York. I spoke about several of our state's signature climate and clean air programs at an event tracking the progress of zero emission vehicles. I spoke about our recently passed Advanced Clean Cars 2 regulation, which of course set forth our enforceable pathway to meet the governor's target of 100% zero emission new car sales by 2035. There was a lot of energy around that, a lot of great conversations. I also provided an update on our carbon neutrality target and the suite of policies to achieve that at the North American Climate Summit. And this was before the landmark climate package was passed. So we focused mostly on the scoping plan update and some of our existing programs on that panel. That was a great discussion. And then I was also on a panel with policymakers from India, where we talked about CARB's Advanced Clean Truck Rule, which requires truck makers to sell increasing amounts of zero emission vehicles in California. And India is really working towards decarbonizing their transportation sector as well. And to date, that has focused mostly on smaller vehicles. And so we had some great conversations about scaling that up to delivery vehicles and larger trucks in India, and spent a lot of time talking about ways to engage in that work going forward. That same week, CARB staff and I went from New York to Pittsburgh, and we attended the Clean Energy Ministerial hosted by the U.S. Department of Energy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I had the opportunity to speak to international audiences about the importance of charging infrastructure. I participated in a freight transport roundtable, which included policymakers and companies from around the world. Some of the companies that are really having to implement this transition to zero emission and some of the challenges that they're seeing in that space. I also spoke at the launch of the new India ZEV Research Center at UC Davis's Institute of Transportation Studies, and as the California representative during the Zero Emission Vehicle Transition Council meeting. In addition, the Transport Decarbonization Alliance, which is currently chaired by California, held several panels on zero emission infrastructure for medium and heavy duty vehicles. So at both Climate Week and the Clean Energy Ministerial, we built and we deepened all of our collaborations with others looking to zero emissions transition throughout the economy and particularly in transport. And at SAM, I had an opportunity to see Secretary Granholm speak and spend a moment with her, receiving her support for all of the great work we're doing here in California. So that was wonderful. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to travel to Egypt for COP27, but I did speak virtually at the World Climate Summit on the role of regulations in encouraging private investment in clean technology, and at a clean truck event hosted by the Transport Decarbonization Alliance. In addition, Dr. Michelle Buffington, CARB's vehicle program specialist and lead for our work with TDA, was able to attend COP27 in person. And so she helped bring together several TDA events on medium and heavy duty trucks, on zero emission zones in cities, and on circularity in businesses, as well as a call for 10,000 trained professionals to design, build, and implement active mobility projects around the world. Looking at active mobility in addition to zero emission vehicles is really an important aspect of our work, and we really are excited to be part of that that call to action. In addition to those events, CARB deputies and staff help represent California at several other international speaking events in 2022, such as the Mexico Carbon Forum, meetings for the Governor's Forest and Climate Task Force, and more. So we really continue to provide climate and clean air leadership to audiences around the world. We continue to work alongside other state agencies and collaborating with jurisdictions on specific regulatory programs. And one thing I'd like to particularly highlight, there was a lot of discussion earlier about the importance of Otay Mesa and our relationship with Mexico. And in the development of our advanced clean fleets regulation, which will include a purchase requirement for fleets over 50 vehicles, we really have appreciated consistent partnership and engagement with fellow policymakers in Baja and Mexico. One of our board members, Supervisor Nora Vargas, represents the border communities, and she engaged in a forum a few weeks ago to really share kind of the opportunities and challenges that the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation will present for the trucking industry as it operates on the border and crossing the border. So we will really continue that important engagement to try to make our work in the area of decarbonizing goods movement as effective as possible. So looking forward, we're going to continue to prioritize sharing and learning lessons from other jurisdictions. And we look forward to all of our multilateral engagements, and particularly excited about the 2023 trade mission to Japan that you mentioned earlier, Lieutenant Governor. So thank you so much for allowing me to share our experiences over the last quarter.
Thank you very much for that great briefing, Chair Rundolph, and for everything you and your team are doing. There's no question that as California leads the way on these issues, you have been over the last few months given a very high profile around how we actually technically get further along in our efforts to move toward carbon-free for cleaner air as a result of changing, in particular, transportation. So thank you very much for that. Now I would like to turn to Chair David Hochschild of the California Energy Commission. We see you, David. It's quite an image, sort of matrixy. But we can see you, and if you can hear us, and I see you have your mute off, we would love to hear from you, your recent updates, and in particular, I believe you were in Egypt for COP27.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and first of all, congratulations to Leanne for the tremendous work on the scoping plan. A real accomplishment for the whole state. So I'm sorry to be joining you by car. I'm driving back from the Tesla Mega Factory, which is the largest utility scale battery factory in the United States. And about 1,000 of the 45,000 California employees of Tesla are based here, making energy storage, which is a key part of our climate and our electric reliability plans. So unfortunately, I did not go to COP. I sent my Vice Chair Siva Gunda, who was there. I did join some forums virtually at terrible hours of the day, but I did want to share a few things in relation to the Japan trip, because a lot of what we're investing in the budget right now in terms of climate solutions lines up beautifully with the trip that you've organized, Madam Lieutenant Governor. Most notably, today is actually a really big day for us as a state, and at the Energy Commission, especially on offshore wind. So this is the date that the first lease sale for waters off the west coast of the United States for offshore wind is happening. So this is 583 square miles off the central and north coasts, and that's going to be a major down payment on our goal to get to 25 gigawatts of offshore wind in California, which is now the state goal. And just keep in mind that the state peak demand is about 50 gigawatts. So it's a really ambitious target. And Japan is working on offshore wind as well. I look forward to engaging with them on our trip. In addition, a lot of momentum and activity related to electric heat pump technologies. We're putting in about $1 billion into building decarbonization, working really closely with Leanne and her colleagues at CARB on that. And Japan has a bunch of other companies in that space, Fujitsu and others. And then hydrogen as well. We have $100 million for green hydrogen in the budget as part of the climate agenda, and we look forward to engaging on that. And then finally, electric vehicles. We're now adding about 1,000 electric vehicles a day to the roads in California, and making a major down payment as well on EV charging. The Energy Commission is going to spend about $4 billion on electric vehicle charging, and CARB is focused on the vehicles and putting in about $6 billion altogether. So incredibly exciting times, and really looking forward to engaging with our partners in Japan. And thank you again for organizing that delegation. I'm really glad it's finally coming to pass. I know it got delayed several times because of COVID, but glad we're back on target for March and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Hochschild. And again, just a reminder, I think we have 4 or 5 of us, maybe more, who are scheduled to be on that Japan trip. As so details are all coming together, please make sure that you're engaging with your teams so that you're up to date on all the latest details, but it is coming together very, very well. So finally, when we talk about these major climate meetings, we turn to California EPA. I believe Shireen D'Souza is here representing Cal EPA. We look forward to your report, Shireen.
Yes, thanks so much, Lieutenant Governor. It's really great to be here. I know Secretary Yana Garcia is very excited to join the meeting. She's running a few minutes late, so she asked me to stand in for her in the interim. And just as a little bit of background, Secretary Garcia and I went to New York Climate Week in September, and it was just such a great opportunity to showcase all of the incredible work that California is doing in the climate space. And I think you can characterize Cal EPA's international engagement in 2022 as robust, diverse, deepening, with a heavy focus on both climate change and environmental protection. And as such, we recognize that it's incumbent upon us to engage extensively with other governments, the private sector, and civil society organizations, both domestically and internationally. As I mentioned, Secretary Garcia, shortly after she took office, had the pleasure of participating in New York Climate Week, where she attended and spoke on a number of panels, seminars, and meetings. Notably, the Under 2 Coalition held several events at New York Climate Week, including its General Assembly. Under 2, for those who are not familiar, is the largest coalition of subnational governments coming together to collaborate on climate action. It represents about half of the world's economy and nearly 2 billion people. Since California is a founder and serves as North American co-chair of the coalition, Secretary Garcia represented our state at Under 2's Governor's Climate Action Summit and moderated a panel on equity and climate finance at the General Assembly. After the signing of the new Under 2 MOU last year, the coalition is undergoing significant changes to refine the scope of cooperation and to strengthen ambitions. California continues to exercise leadership and influence the future direction of the coalition, for example, through advocating for equitable engagement of low-income countries. Current questions the coalition is exploring together run the gamut of today's climate policy world, including how US states can make the best of the opportunities of the IIJA and IRA. Later at Climate Week, Secretary Garcia had the opportunity to address an executive roundtable on unlocking climate collaborations across the Americas, where governments, businesses, and other key stakeholders came together to address common regional challenges. Beyond the climatic similarities of shared geography, Her remarks touched upon the economic opportunities for regionally integrated supply chains for the transition to renewable energy, ZEVs, and industrial decarbonization, which is particularly relevant in the current geopolitical moment. Secretary Garcia also highlighted the difficulties governments in the Americas face in the ongoing process of reconciliation with Indigenous nations and communities, as well as the region's high levels of economic and racial inequality. In doing so, California's focus on prioritizing equity in our climate targets and carbon neutrality efforts has become a key message in our collaborations with international partners. Also at Climate Week, the Climate Registry organized a breakfast of climate champions where Secretary Garcia had the opportunity to promote California's successes in the major package of climate legislation passed in September and the $54 billion California climate commitment. Surrounded by like-minded climate leaders in government and industry, the event was an opportunity to strengthen positive feedback loops in climate ambition, to encourage a race to the top, and also to promote the 2023 Climate Leadership Conference, which Los Angeles will host in May, and which I know several others have already highlighted. Beyond these high-profile events, Cal EPA continues to engage with foreign governments at the expert level through memoranda of understanding, helping promote policy cross-pollination and the exchange of technical know-how. In the climate world, it's common knowledge that California's vehicle emission standards, cap and trade program, renewable energy policies, and many more are studied by regulators around the world. To give one example, China's national emissions trading scheme, now the largest carbon market in the world, was designed with a careful study of California's. And we look forward to further opportunities for mutual learning through the new China-California MOU, which was signed in May. In September, Secretary Garcia signed an MOU with the Netherlands Minister of Environment during the royal visit of Queen Maxima to California. And Secretary Blumenfeld, the former Cal EPA secretary, also signed MOUs this year with counterparts from Canada and New Zealand. And Cal EPA is named as an implementing agency in various MOUs signed by the governor. Next year, priorities will include continued consultations with our neighbors in Mexico and Baja California on cross-border issues related to water, waste, air quality, and transportation decarbonization. These discussions are particularly relevant to ensuring the stability of cross-border trade in the context of the Advanced Clean Fleets Regulation, which CARB is currently developing. And as we move into 2023, we acknowledge our prerogative not just to address the 1% of global GHG emissions that California is responsible for, but also to influence other jurisdictions to adopt bold policies like ours. And we will continue to seek out multilateral platforms to share our experiences with the world and to engage with foreign partners one-on-one, where we have opportunities to coordinate programs and share lessons with each other. So with that, I'll stop, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much for that report. I'd like to switch gears, and our next report will come from Mark Ghilarducci at Cal OES. He has been waiting patiently. He always joins us for these meetings, and I think it's safe to say that under his leadership, the work at Cal OES in countless aspects of California's international engagement, from border issues and transnational law enforcement to cooperation on some of the major challenges of our state, including fighting wildfires and on and on. Secretary Ghilarducci has been at the forefront of these issues for quite some time. And if I may say, Mark, I think this is coming up now on perhaps your last meeting, though I'm very heartened by the fact that you say you're going to retire and you don't. I'm actually hoping that will go on for a few more years.
Yes.
But just in the eventuality that, in fact, we are seeing you here at this meeting, possibly for the last time, let me just start before I hand it over to you by thanking you for your unparalleled service to the state of California and for making these meetings so incredibly impactful by using the meetings as a platform to be able to convey to the people of the state the extraordinary work that OES does in this international sphere. So with that, Secretary Ghilarducci, you have the floor.
All right. Well, thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor. Deeply appreciative on the comments, and really great to be with all of you today, to see you all here on this meeting. Yes, we continue to be very much engaged this past year. Just in the area of delegations alone, we've since our last meeting in July, OES has welcomed 6 separate delegations from Romania, South Africa, 2 from Germany, Taiwan, and Lithuania, to talk about everything from emergency management to wildfires to cybersecurity to public safety communications, resiliency, etc. In specific, the delegation for Romania, their special telecommunications division visited with us and our public safety division to discuss the best practices on implementing next generation 911, something that California is doing and is really not being done to the scope and scale any other place in the world. And gives us a platform here to be able to share best practices with different countries. And of course, Romania was very interested in building out a similar program. From South Africa, we met with the minister and his delegation from the Ministry of Agriculture in Western Cape to share best practices on wildfires and innovation in firefighting technology. I know that these folks also had a chance to meet with the Department of Agriculture and our partners at CAL FIRE to expand their engagement. From Bavaria in Germany, we welcomed 13 high-level parliament leaders from their state legislature, interested to learn about how California prevents and responds to wildfires, earthquakes, homeland security, and general risk prevention. And from Lithuania, we had delegation from their health emergency ministry join us to learn about how California's standardized emergency management system coordinates all of the multiple agencies at all levels of government, the ability to stay out in front of these evolving crises that we see and then respond in a coordinated fashion in planning and logistics and recovery operations. And then finally from Taiwan, we welcome a delegation from the National Fire Agency who participated in an emergency management concepts all hazard training, which was hosted by our California Specialized Training Institute and provided an engagement with our state operations center. So a lot of activity with different countries, and we continue to work with all of them as we broaden our participation, our partnerships. As all of you know, in July of this year, the governor's office did issue a memorandum to all state agencies and departments related to vetting of delegations, and it's our travel security program. And I want to thank you all. I'm deeply appreciative of your cooperation and participation in the program. Interesting to note that just this year alone, our State Threat Assessment Center has received 85 requests from 89 different countries, and we vetted more than 596 delegates that had planned on visiting 36 different agencies. So that travel security program, which is really important, helps to keep the security of California in the forefront while also streamlining the process and making sure that we remain knowing who is coming in and engaging with us. We also were able to sign a letter of intent with Baden-Württemberg in Germany. There's obviously a tremendous interest. This is an international challenge, and that's an area of cybersecurity. And we were able to pen this agreement with Baden-Württemberg that's centered around cybersecurity and cooperation on related security actions, and how we can develop jointly share information and rapid response teams as we see international crime syndicates and others working in the space around cyber related challenges. Pivoting to donations, this year we have distributed more than 2 million pieces of personal protective equipment to Mexican consulates as well as to Consulate of Portugal in San Francisco and to Ukraine. And with the ongoing humanitarian crisis happening in Ukraine, OES coordinated with our governor's office to assist Ukraine with medical equipment and tactical gear to support those affected by the war. In total, we were able to send to Ukraine 7 50-bed field medical stations and 500,000 pieces of personal protective equipment. I want to say that we had actual footage and engagement with Ukrainian folks on the ground. Those field hospitals actually went into service as soon as they hit the ground, and they were being utilized, which was really great to be able to help the folks there. And additionally, we were able to coordinate with law enforcement throughout the state and state agencies to deliver over 4,000 ballistic vests and over 1,500 ballistic helmets. So that effort and the donation management, working with NGOs, Direct Relief International, and many of the agencies that are represented here, I can't thank you enough for your effort in that space. We also participated in the Commission of the Californians, obviously in September. That was a great opportunity to reestablish points of contact. We had the opportunity not only to collaborate on zero emission vehicle efforts with regards to our partners across the border, but as well at the time we were starting to see the actions related to Tropical Storm K. And so because of the COMCAL, we were able to maintain that communications with civil protection directors in Baja North and South to share situational awareness on Tropical K across the border, as well as discuss security and resiliency efforts. And in October, I was honored to participate in virtually into a seminar in Seoul, South Korea, which really hosted an international organization on migration and USAID, where I was able to present the group of government emergency management officials on how California's unified coordination effort operates. And that unified coordination effort is really highlighted in the work that we are doing down on the border. As many of you know, and some of the agencies that are represented here are participating with us. We have established a unified border coordination group and several what we call TVRCs, or testing, vaccination, resource centers along the southwest border in Imperial and Riverside and San Diego counties to provide humanitarian assistance to asylum-seeking migrant population that are coming across. To date, we have served well over 265,000 migrants that have come across the border and in our TVRCs. And we're very proud of the work and our partnership with the NGOs, Catholic Charities, and Jewish Family Services, as well as the counties and the other agencies, Health and Human Services and CDPH that have been involved in this effort. And then lastly, our global earthquake model, or what we call GEM, it's our Seismic Safety Commission. The commission continues to be involved with the Global Earthquake Modeling Foundation in Italy, which is a nonprofit focused on earthquake resiliency. We have similar threats that they do with regards to seismic threats. And so OES serves as a non-voting member of the advisory board and helps to share real-time information. So this year, as we move forward, our priorities will be to maintain our international efforts, including strengthening our partnerships and continuing collaboration on initiatives under the existing MOUs with Chile, Baja California North, and Mexico on the federal level. And we have resumed communication with Ukraine and Portugal in developing and finalizing an MOU. And we have maintained communication and engagement with the Aga Khan Development Network to extend the existing MOU and re-sign by the end of this year. And then more recently, we established communications with Buenos Aires and Argentina and Taiwan, all of whom have pending MOU requests. And lastly, we continue to work with our international counterparts to strengthen emergency management capabilities through bilateral exchanges on technical expertise and mutual aid. So, Madam Lieutenant Governor, thank you very much for the opportunity to spend a little time with you and to share some of the work that we're doing here at OES. And I thank you all very much.
Well, thank you very much for that incredible overview. Before we move on, could we ask you, one thing that has been quite a bit in the news lately is the increased incidence in overdoses from fentanyl and in fentanyl deaths. And if you could maybe just very briefly, from that international lens, help us understand where this is coming from and how OES works with federal authorities to minimize the ability of this poison into our communities. Is there anything maybe, Mark, that you could share with us about this and what we're doing about it?
Sure. Great question. So just let me start broadly. Generally, the precursor chemicals that make up fentanyl generally come from Asia, predominantly China. They flow into Mexico, where the cartels bring those precursor chemicals together and they put them into the pill form, predominantly pill form, sometimes white pills, sometimes multicolored pills, which can be confusing to young people. The corridor that exists in normal narcotics trafficking, which comes across the southwest border, a lot coming through the port of entries at San Ysidro and Calexico. Those pathways are the normal pathways. We have seen obviously a general uptick in narcotics trafficking overall, but an exponential uptick in fentanyl. Obviously, this is a lot about supply and demand. The corridors tend to come up through the I-5 corridor and then into Northern California and then branch out Southern California, the I-15 towards the southern part of the country, and then along Highway 80 up into the central part of the country to Chicago area, Illinois, and then in New York. We have a number of task forces that are in place, working with not only our California Highway Patrol along the highways, which are interdiction routes, but along the maritime environment with the Coast Guard and sheriff's departments up and down the coast. The high intensity drug trafficking organizations that exist within the state, these are regional, these are components which are task force oriented. They include DEA, Department of Homeland Security, our state and local law enforcement. All of those folks are engaged, as well as the Attorney General's office, DOJ, to be able to do the interdiction. And so it's really an all hands on deck approach. The amount of fentanyl that's being trafficked is probably the highest we've ever seen. And so it takes a lot of resources. And you've probably been seeing in the news, most of the time when we have big interdictions, there's news on it. There's been a lot of moderate to smaller interdictions as well that have not made the news. But that said, there's still a lot of fentanyl getting through, which is the problem we're seeing in our communities and to young people that are overdosing on this stuff. So certainly a factor. The State Threat Assessment Center and our regional fusion centers are actively involved in intelligence gathering, narcotics trafficking pathways, different groups that are tending to be more active in the trafficking so that we can work with law enforcement, provide that intelligence to them. We use our cybersecurity center, dark web monitoring and other kinds of forms to be able to look at transnational criminal organizations and other different groups that they're trafficking this. And we feed all that into law enforcement to be able to do interdiction. So that's sort of a high level, a lot of different agencies involved. And unfortunately, it is an ongoing challenge, given the multiple challenges we have with lots of different things that we deal with. But the fentanyl is clearly something that is of great concern of ours.
Well, thank you very much. And I think it's really important that we recognize this exponential increase in the amount of fentanyl coming in over the borders, because it seems as though every day there's something in the news about an accidental overdose and people dying from this, especially young people. So thank you very much for that. And again, we appreciate so much your participation in these meetings and look forward to this work being and the reports being carried on by your staff, Mark, and thank you again for everything. So let's turn now to Carolyn Butetta, Chief Executive Officer of Visit California, for her report. Hello, Carolyn.
Hi, thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and I do echo your sentiments with Mark Garladucci. Thank you, Director, for all the work you've done with us on crisis and wildfire and visitor awareness. Really appreciate your tenure. So you'll be missed, but you've really created what a foundation and institution. So much appreciated. Turning to international on the travel and tourism front, really what we're seeing now is a return to pre-pandemic spending, not until 2025 for California, mostly because of international. That is really lagging for us, as well as the business and meetings front continues. So I was thrilled, Lieutenant Governor, with your announcement about the Asia Pacific Conference right in San Francisco. Definitely needs the business, and what a high profile event to engender confidence for other meeting planners around the world. Very, very exciting. So we do have some good news. Mexico, Canada, Europe are leading the recovery and are mostly recovered, that including Germany. And interestingly, India is overperforming. We've moved them up to a tier 2 market, actually. And so the Middle East is also overperforming against our expectations. Interestingly, India is doing quite well economically, and we see good momentum for the future. Ultra high net worth grew 9% in India in 2021. So that will continue to be a very strong trading partner. International airlift is 75% recovered. So that is good news. I mean, weekly, we're seeing more and more dedicated flights inbound, particularly as we look to Asia, for example. Our top barriers for international inbound travel, inflation is a big one, currency devaluation, and the continuing visa backlog is still troubling for us. Even Mexico has a 6 to 8 month backlog for visa. Our top 10 markets in the visa countries are still averaging over 400 days. So that's a big issue for all of us, not just on a leisure front, but also a business front. China was our largest international market prior to the pandemic. They spent about $4 billion a year in California. And that market is the most challenging. And we've all witnessed that with the protests, et cetera, in the last couple of weeks. Prior to those protests, they announced new guidelines, and that could have been some of the impetus for the protests. We're hopeful, and we're seeing some signs of some pivots from zero tolerance to treatment-oriented options. And really where many of us all are in the pandemic, of course. So conservatively and cautiously optimistic, we're looking at China opening for inbound international travel late 2023 or 2024. So given this backdrop, international is our #1 priority this year to continue to open those markets over the next 2 years. We're spending a dedicated $30 million across 13 markets, probably about an additional $10 million on global, just to continue that market strategy, which is highly competitive. We have a 3-tiered strategy that, depending on the priority, is direct to consumer or business to business, for example. Some of the international priorities we're looking at for the next coming months is continuing to re-educate and build relationships with the travel trade, as well as prioritize some of our investments and launch direct advertising spend in the UK, Canada, and Mexico. In March, of course, major priority with your mission to Japan. We're very thrilled to be part of your delegation. And for tourism, it's been historically one of our top overseas markets. And this will definitely help stimulate demand vis-a-vis over our competitive set. We already actually have already over 13 CEOs registered as part of our delegation, and I'm sure we'll see a few more. Some of the key highlights for Japan we're looking at is a roundtable meeting with the Japanese Association of Travel Agents, the top CEOs of wholesalers that provide that inbound travel. Critical, cannot have inbound travel without JADA. We'll be conducting a press conference as well as doing a CEO roundtable luncheon with 7 of our top airline executives from ANA to Japan Airlines, American, Hawaiian, LATAM, and Malaysia Air. And then finally, working with you and the Department of Agriculture on our Taste of California VIP reception. So a lot happening there. We're also working on some consumer activations and of course the signing of an MOU going forward with JADA in this post recovery environment. Other priorities are cooperative campaigns with Brand USA, our national counterpart, major trade shows, IPW in San Antonio on May 20th. And then I'll be doing a CEO mission to Europe in June and a plethora of other trade activations. I just want to close by saying on the sustainability front, I'm excited because we are kicking off a 2-year process of regional tourism planning with all 12 of our regions. We're dedicating $5 million in EDA money to do 10-year plans to make sure that we are looking at sustainable tourism efforts and planning with California communities over the next 10 years. So more to come on that front, but we've been spending a lot of time getting ready to kick off those planning efforts in January. So that's my report, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Thank you for everything you're doing to help with the Japan trip. And, you know, just as a reminder for everyone, we say it all the time, but it can't be overstated, the importance of tourism to our economy, not just for the tourist economy, but also because so many people come here, they come for a visit, and then they decide that they want to do international business with our state as well. So thank you for that. Next, we will turn to Samuel Asefa, the Director of the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. Director Asefa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and thank you for having me here as well. It's great to hear this incredible collaboration between California and the EU. When I hear it, I just keep feeling like we are a country engaging with other countries, which is, you know, a point of pride, as the governor often says. Just a quick report on Office of Planning and Research engagement. Last year at COP26 in Glasgow, my office signed an MOU with the EU's Climate Knowledge and Innovation Community, or Climate KIC. This is Europe's leading climate innovation agency that is working with over 100 cities across Europe to achieve net zero by 2030. The OPR Climate KIC MOU focused on 2 key objectives. First, to strengthen general knowledge and sharing and collaboration between the EU and California on innovation that addresses climate change. And then second, to undertake innovation projects in California in several areas where California and European interests overlap, again, to advance climate goals. So as part of that MOU, in April of 2022, OPR and Climate KIC developed and approved an action plan which outlined deliverables for 2022 and 2023. There were a total of 14 projects identified in that action plan just for 2022, and currently we have completed 12 of those, and 2 are ongoing. I'm not going to go through these 12 projects. My office will be completing an end of year report in the next couple of weeks. on this, and we'll be happy to share, but I'll just highlight some of the kinds of projects in collaboration. Working with the Climate Kick and staff from here and from the EU, worked in Europe over the last few months to develop a project that is focused on electric vehicle car sharing, and wrote a research report on not only just electric vehicle car sharing and what opportunities exist there, but specifically focused on secondhand EV market for underserved communities in California and the EU to advance equity and access to EVs. We facilitated a site visit, several site visits and meetings for the delegation that accompanied Queen Maxima, that Lieutenant Governor you mentioned earlier. This included businesses and institutions that focus on a lot of the climate change and EV, such as Nissan, UC Berkeley, UC Davis, as well as PG&E's Moss Landing, the largest battery energy storage facility or system in the world. Last September, also, my office hosted the first California EU Climate Working Conference in Sacramento, and included members from the EU, Regional Minister of Noord-Holland in the Netherlands, as well as state agency leaders from the California Energy Commission, Air Resources Board, CalSA, Caltrans, GO-Biz, Cal EPA, to really discuss and explore, collaboration opportunities, and their ideas that are developed from that conversation that we are identifying for 2023 and maybe 2024 opportunities. We also had tours of smart, clean, equitable transportation solutions in San Francisco as part of a trade mission by the Dutch consulate in 2022. And then presentations and discussions with the Southern California Clean Cities Coalition, an agency that coordinates the activities of private and public sector proponents of alternative fuel vehicles, as well as similar engagement with our EU partners in Fresno with environmental justice stakeholders, as well as youth groups and high school students in the Fresno area. Those are some of the examples. Since summer of 2022, we have been contacted by various EU states, including Sweden, Estonia, Denmark, and the Netherlands, as well as non-EU states such as the UK and Scotland, who reached out to learn more about this kind of collaboration, and specifically around the OPR Climate Kick MOU, and asking about how to collaborate. For instance, a mobility energy delegation from Estonia visited California this summer, and as a result, various projects were discussed and information shared in that. Similarly, the Swedish EPA is now interested in organizing a set of meetings and visits as part of the International EVS 36 conference, which is scheduled in Sacramento in 2023. So those are some of the highlights. Currently, we're finalizing the report, but also focusing on key potential deliverables, including potential pilot projects in collaboration with our European partners. So I'll stop at that, and that would be kind of some of the key engagements as part of our coast-to-coast program and the MOU with the EU Climate Kick. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Director Aceyfa. And we're running toward the end of our time here, so we have two more members of the committee to give your reports. We will turn next to Amanda Hanson, Deputy Secretary of the California Natural Resources Agency. Deputy Secretary Hanson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and I will be brief. The Natural Resources Agency really continues to focus our international engagement on how California's nature-based solutions agenda, which is outlined in the Governor's 2020 executive order, can contribute to addressing the global crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. A few areas of recent international engagement. In September, Secretary Crowfoot and I joined the California delegation at Climate Week in New York. We co-hosted an official event on wildfire and forest health with our partners in Canada, which we committed to doing as part of our Canada-California Climate Action and Nature Protection Partnership. We also met with numerous bilateral partners, including jurisdictions with Mediterranean climates facing similar impacts, climate impacts as California, such as wildfire and drought. And we participated in several events organized by key partners, for example, the high-level roundtable on moving beyond oil and gas, and various discussions organized by the Under 2 Coalition, which Shireen explained what that is. Shortly after we returned home from New York, Secretary Crowfoot and members of our team met with the South African Western Cape's Minister of Agriculture, as many of us did, and our discussions really focused on drought and climate adaptation. I'll take a minute here just to talk a little bit about the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's law enforcement team that has been pretty active internationally this fall. A member of their team was selected to participate in the Wildlife Officer Exchange Program organized by the Department of State in Kenya and Namibia. And the goal of this program is to really prepare the next generation of conservation law enforcement executives to carry out their mission successfully in a rapidly changing world. This team was also asked to participate in the 19th Annual Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, which took place in Panama last month. And they also hosted a delegation from Vietnam to discuss enforcement efforts related to recreational and commercial fisheries, marine protected areas, and illegal wildlife trafficking. And finally, leadership from our California Conservation Corps traveled to Honduras to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the Conservation Corps in Honduras, which they helped establish in 2016 in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service. Coming soon to upcoming international events to put on everyone's radar, Secretary Crowfoot and our biodiversity team will be heading to Montreal later this month to represent California at the 15th Conference of the Parties of the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, where we will really focus on supporting the finalization of an ambitious 10-year global framework on biodiversity protection. And in February, reps from our oceans team will participate in the 5th International Marine Protected Areas Congress in Vancouver, Canada. And I will stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And we look forward to hearing back from you at our next meeting about the conference in Canada, the Summit for Biodiversity. That is, I understand, going to be a very interesting upcoming meeting. Okay, so finally, in terms of our committee members' reports, we turn to Gilles Giovinazzi from the California Department of Transportation.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis and members of the International Affairs and Trade Development Interagency Committee. I'm Gilles Giovinazzi, Senior Advisor at CalSDA, serving as Secretary Omashtakan's alternate to the committee. With regard to COP27, CalSTA did participate, was represented at COP27 by our Deputy Secretary for Environmental Policy and Housing, Darwin Musavi, who unfortunately had to leave us. But Darwin spoke to California's multi-sectoral climate leadership on a panel hosted by the California China Institute at the UC Berkeley, and about California's strategies for realizing equitable and resilient decarbonized communities, an event hosted by ARUP and the Climate Registry. Darwin was able to highlight the state's ambitious zero-emission vehicle policies, the successes of the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, and the significant state and federal investments in the transportation sector mitigation and adaptation over the past 2 years. Secretary Omashtakan, Lieutenant Governor, wants to thank you just for your incredible leadership and your support for the Otay Mesa East project. And you've already highlighted a number of the major recent developments, Secretary Buttigieg's visit, and Secretary Omashtakan wants to thank you for representing the state in Mexico City at the revenue toll sharing signing, the Sandag Mexico revenue toll sharing signing. Just two other things that hit was that the project received $150 million Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act infra grant, which is the largest infra grant in the country this year, and that Caltrans is planning to pursue a SB1 Trade Corridor Enhancements Program grants from the California Transportation Commission, those grants will be awarded next year. With regard to engagement with Japan in advance of the Japan trade mission, which Secretary Omashakin will be attending, Secretary Omashakin's had a number of engagements with Japanese officials in the last few months. In August, the Secretary and CalSTA staff joined Japanese dignitaries in San Francisco for the 5th Japan Infrastructure Investment Forum. And then in October, Secretary Omashakin met with the Japanese Acting Consul General Hajime Kishimori to discuss the implementation of the Japan-California Memorandum of Cooperation on Climate Change and Trade Relations. Consul General Kishimori is particularly interested in international efforts to advance port decarbonization and green shipping lanes. And right before Thanksgiving, Secretary Omashakin visited Japan with a delegation organized by the California Foundation on the Environment and the Economy. Among other things, the seafood trip provided insights into delivering and operating Japan's Shinkansen high-speed rail system. Secretary Omashakin also had a chance to visit with Japanese automotive OEMs, including Toyota in Mitsubishi. And in the run-up to the California-Japan trade mission, one area CalSTA is exploring with GO-Biz, Energy Commission, CARB staff, and with your staff is the development of a subnational agreement with the government of Japan to promote green ports. We are drafting a letter of intent building on the framework of California's current climate change agreement with Japan to advance the work of the Clybank Declaration for Green Shipping Corridors, and more recently, the Biden administration's U.S.-Japan climate partnership through the Quad Shipping Alliance to advance green shipping and sustainable transportation infrastructure. We would also highlight concrete steps the Newsom administration has already taken to advance green ports, such as California's commitment to 100% zero-emission drayage truck operations by 2035, the inclusion of funding for zero-emission port equipment, drayage trucks, and infrastructure, and also CalSTA's $1.2 billion port and freight infrastructure program that was included in the most recent state budget. California's major container ports are also already moving forward on the climate dialogue with Japan. Port of LA signed an agreement with the Japan External Trade Organization to advance green shipping corridors. And the Port of Long Beach recently signed a similar agreement with the Japanese Port of Kobe. So Secretary Omashakin believes the time is right for the state of California to enter into the clean port dialogue with Japan, and CalSTA looks forward to working with its sister agencies to advance this work. Thank you. That includes CalSTA's update.
Well, thank you very much for that very efficient, great overview of all the work that you are doing. And the secretary is just so forward-leaning in this work, and really willing to go to great lengths and travel and move forward with conversations and MOUs in order to be able to meet the state's goals. So thank you very much for that report. And I have some closing comments, but I think I will turn first, just in case we have anyone who wishes to address us in public comment. So Secretary Desai, is there anyone who would like to address the committee in public comment today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you would like to make a comment, please indicate so by writing your request in the Q&A field or raising your hand. We will unmute you and allow you to speak. Maria, can you please help to facilitate any available public comments?
Yes, there are no public comments at this time.
Thank you, Maria.
Okay, then I think we are on schedule to finish almost exactly on time. And I would just like to turn to the coming months and say a few words about our upcoming international events and priorities. We have been speaking quite a bit about the delegation to Japan. As I mentioned, California is the #1 state in the US in terms of exports to Japan, accounting for nearly 16% of total US exports to that country. Total trade between California and Japan amounted to over $34 billion in 2021. And perhaps most important is that Japan is our #1 source of foreign direct investment. In 2021, over 3,500 Japanese companies operating in California created 105,000 jobs and accounted for almost $11 billion in wages. Even in light of all these already impressive facts, I believe there is still incredible potential for even closer commercial relations. Next week, I plan, along with Secretary Director Myers, to attend the meeting of the board of Hitachi, which will be held in San Francisco. And we will be speaking about California's strong commitment to deepen our trade and investment relationship with Japan. With regard to Mexico, I've already mentioned the ongoing process. Several of us have talked about the ongoing process at the Otay Mesa East border crossing facility. I think I have now been down there 4 or 5 times. It is so impressive, and this facility will be a state-of-the-art facility in terms of being able to move people and goods quickly, but also in the most secure fashion to both sides of the border. Mexico has consistently remained the #1 destination for California exports and our #2 overall trading partner. And just like our relationship with Japan, we think it has even more potential. We will continue to seek trade opportunities with Mexico countrywide, but we'll also focus heavily on further developing relations with our Commission of the California partners in Baja California and Baja California Sur. Again, tremendous cooperation, some of which was enumerated by Director Ghilarducci, far beyond just the trade cooperation, and again, with extraordinary potential to continue to develop that relationship. Finally, at the risk of leaving many of our valued international partners out, I want to mention several other engagements our office and our teams have taken to work together with international partners since our last meeting. We were very pleased to meet with the Australian, Chinese, Croatian, Danish, Georgian, Greek, Irish, Israeli, Italian, Japanese, Mexican, Qatari, and Turkish consuls general, as well as the Georgian ambassador from Washington, D.C. We greeted ministerial level trade delegations from Norway and Taiwan, the leader of the Irish opposition, and we also met with officials from Western Cape in South Africa and from the Parliament of Kyrgyzstan. My team and I were also pleased to be able to deliver messages of congratulations or otherwise help observe the national holidays of Korea, China, Germany, and Taiwan. It is inspiring for me and for all of us here in the Lieutenant Governor's office, and I know with our Secretary, Emily Desai, and Director Myers' team over at GO-Biz, and all of us here to be able to share and talk about the incredible work that is happening in our state in the international arena. Governor Newsom refers to California as a nation state because although we are a subnational entity, countries around the world look to California as a leader. So thank you to all the secretaries, directors, and their representatives for your participation today. This committee is designed to provide a forum so the people of California know that their state is continuing to work on their behalf and to give them the opportunity to come and to share their views and ask questions of us. Thank you all very much. And with no further ado, this meeting is adjourned.